What's up, Steeler fans? It is time for a brand new segment. Jeremy Jerome Betts is taking care of some personal things, and he's going to step away for a while. And so, we have a gap. We need to fill that gap, that void. We're doing it with what we're calling the Coach's Corner. And with that, we bring in Coach Kevin Smith. What's up, Coach? How are you?
What's happening, Jeff? I hope everything's going all right.
Yes, sir. And I'm glad that we get to do this because obviously we do the NFL whip around every week for the FFS and NFL feed. But we talk about the Steelers, but it's kind of just, in addition to the rest of the National Football League. So I'm excited for this. I want to talk to you about last week before we move ahead, not to spend a ton of time, but I want to talk offensively. You did a great article for SteelCurtainNetwork.com all about Mason Rudolph and what he did, the good, the bad, the indifferent, all that stuff. What was the biggest difference, in your opinion, between the Aaron Rodgers offense that we saw in the first half and the Mason Rudolph offense that we saw in the second half?
I don't know if there's a huge difference between the two in terms of the overall schematic philosophy, but there's a big difference in the operation. I mean, Mason Rudolph is 6'5" and 230 some pounds, and he's 30 years old. He's young, he's big, he's in his prime. He's willing to stand in the pocket significantly longer than Aaron Rodgers. And by significant, we mean like a second, but that matters in the NFL, Rodgers is going to turn 42 in a couple of weeks. He's a smaller quarterback. I mean, he's not a small guy, but smaller than Rudolph. And I think all Steeler fans have recognized his penchant for just getting out of the pocket, right? So you can call, as a play caller, you can call some routes that maybe take a little bit longer to develop, that maybe hit a little bit deeper down the field if you know your quarterback's going to hang in there. And I think we saw a little bit of that with Rudolph.
Would you say that with all that stuff that you just said, Mason Rudolph's age, his willingness to stay in the pocket, Rodgers trying to get out of the pocket, is there a quarterback that you think best marries what Arthur Smith wants to do at this stage of the game?
I think Arthur Smith, I laugh because I'm going to try to say this delicately. I think Arthur Smith would love a better version of Mason Rudolph.
Got it.
A big, strong quarterback who will sit in the pocket, who will be able to, that he can really marry his run game to the passing game. Because when you want to be a run-first coordinator, then you also really want a quarterback who can thrive off of play action and, who's going to give you, that fake to the back, set up at 7 yards deep, stand in the pocket, let the deeper routes develop down the field. And that's really not Aaron Rodgers' game right now. I also see a big difference in terms of what happens at the line of scrimmage between the two. I think that Arthur Smith gives Aaron Rodgers a lot of flexibility to make adjustments at the line, whether they're protections, changing routes, RPOs that are built into the play, whatever they might be. I don't think there's as much of that with Mason Rudolph. And, most offensive coordinators are pretty control-oriented. I think they would like for their quarterbacks to stick to the script a little bit more. I think Arthur Smith probably gives Rudolph some of that flexibility because, A, out of respect, but maybe he'd like things to be a little bit tighter.
All right, so let's put on your coaching hat, not that you ever take that off. And let me ask you, so you have a quarterback who's an aging veteran, but he's a coach on the field in Aaron Rodgers. And he's got this wrist injury on his non-throwing hand. And so he was a limited participant in practice on Wednesday. I have a feeling he's going to be either no designation or questionable. I don't think they're going to rule him out. What would be your hesitation with playing Aaron Rodgers with the left wrist injury that we know about?
Well, obviously, you want to think big picture. You don't want to risk anything that's potentially season ending or that's going to put him on the shelf for an extended period of time. I don't think, because it's his non-throwing hand, I don't think that there's anything that you're worried about in terms of his ability to throw a football. But again, this is a guy who, and I'm not questioning Aaron Rodgers' toughness by any stretch of the imagination. But you're almost 42 years old. You're not looking to take a bunch of hits. And now that you've got this injury, it could increase his willingness to want to get the ball out even faster or get out of the pocket quicker. And I don't know if the Steelers can possibly script a shorter, quicker passing game than the one that they already have now. I mean, Aaron Rodgers' average air yardage, meaning the ball that travels in the air from his hand to his target, is among the shortest in the league already. And so if any injury is making him less willing to stand in the pocket or encouraging him to get the ball out faster, I'd be hesitant.
In your opinion, who gives the Steelers the best chance to win this Sunday in Chicago? Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph?
I wish I could just say A or B. It's a tricky question because on paper, I think that it's Mason Rudolph because one, the Bears don't have a lot of film on him. You know, you saw him come in that Cincinnati game in the second half, and the Bengals defense got kind of vanilla. They played a little bit more, they laid back a little bit more because what's he going to do? And you got a half of football, but you still don't have the entire game plan, where Chicago's obviously got, half a season's worth of film on Rodgers. But there's that other part of me that's like, look, man, Aaron Rodgers would love to go into Chicago and win. There's a motivation there for all his years in Green Bay to want to win in Chicago, which I think is a little bit of an intangible.
Okay, so real quick before we leave the offense for a second, you had talked about with me via text, Arthur Smith. You really like some good designs that he's doing. And you know this more than I do or most fans do because you see the game in a different way as a play caller, which you are currently for your high school football team. What is it you want to talk about with Arthur Smith and how is he designing play schemes and all that stuff, setting up everything else? Why don't you go ahead and talk about that briefly?
I'll give you two examples. One, he really does a nice job of scheming plays against man coverage. Steelers have a lot of picks and rubs. They use motion really well. They converted a couple of third downs last week against Cincinnati versus man, where the designs were excellent. On one of them, you had DK Metcalf and Roman Wilson split wide. Wilson was outside and off the ball. He motioned down inside. He came just inside Metcalf. And that usually suggests some sort of crossing route, right? You're motioning in towards the formation. You're getting basically a running start to run a crosser. So the corner who was covering him closed with him. And when Metcalf got off the ball, that corner fought really hard to get over top of Metcalf because he didn't want Metcalf to screen him off from any in-breaking route. And Wilson ran a speed out as a result, and the corner couldn't get back in time to cover it. The Steelers converted 2 first downs on that particular concept, which is really just messing with the logic of the corner. They scored against man coverage. They ran a popular route called mesh traffic to score to Kenneth Gainwell, where it's basically like you got 3 guys running crossing routes from one side of the formation and the back coming across to the other. And they're just creating all this clutter that the linebacker covering the back has to navigate. So he's got some really nice designs against man. And then he's really starting to do some good things with the jumbo package. I mean, you saw it early in the year with the 6 offensive linemen plus Darnell Washington, and they were just hammering away on the ground. Well, he's starting to incorporate the passing game in with that. And he's put in some play action stuff against Cincinnati. They actually faked to Gainwell out of jumbo, had Aaron Rodgers boot one way, and then he threw a screen back to Gainwell. And that play went for about 30 yards, got the Steelers down inside the 10. So I don't know if Arthur Smith gets enough credit for being a really good play designer because the stuff he designs it's not like spectacular stuff. It's not the kind of stuff that's going to go on SportsCenter because it's these big splash plays, but it's these little nuances that he's adding to protect his core plays that I think are really effective.
All right, let's go to the defense side. Great insight for Arthur Smith there, and I appreciate that. Let's go to the defensive side. The Steelers' defense has been markedly better, at least the last 3 weeks. And run defense, they're giving up in terms, if you take the last 3 total rushing yards, they're giving up less than 100 yards per game, 91.6 to be exact, the last 3 weeks. But it's also in the pass game as well. What has been the biggest difference, Coach, in your opinion, to see this defense starting to, what it looks like to me, that they're starting to figure it out? What are they doing differently?
Well, I just think the massive difference as a result of moving Jalen Ramsey and then acquiring Kyle Duggar. Those 2 guys at safety have solved so many of the problems that the Steelers had in terms of their communication. I mean, the last 3 weeks, those guys have been together now for 3 weeks. You've seen very few coverage breakdowns. And the breakdowns, the busts, the turning receivers open was just a regular occurrence. That was a weekly thing. And that Bengals game, that first game where Jamar Chase caught 16 passes, I think was the straw that broke the camel's back. And they've fixed a lot of it. Now, it's not just the personnel. I think Jalen Ramsey, super high football IQ, does a great job getting guys lined up. Kyle Duggar, similar. But Terrell Austin's also simplified the scheme. I mean, the Steelers have really pared back the amount of coverages that they're playing. And I think that they're doing more with less. Guys are playing faster. The Steelers defense against Cincinnati looked the fastest it's looked all year. I think part of that was urgency, but another part of that was by limiting the scheme, guys aren't thinking as much and they're able to play faster.
I would say Ramsey, Duggar are getting a ton of credit. I think Joey Porter Jr. is one of those guys that I think he's elevated his game recently. I think he's playing better. What about Keanu Benton? I see him more than I had in the first half and even all last year. Have you noticed anything about in your film study, Keanu Benton, that you've really liked? Or maybe there's things that you're like, hey, they're playing him in a different fashion. What do you see there?
He's winning one-on-ones. He's quicker off the ball. I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but it almost felt like early in the season, he was either injured or out of shape because he's playing with much better energy now than he was earlier in the season. He just looks slow. Derek Harmon is a monster. I mean, that guy, if you watch him, he's almost like the equivalent of watching Darnell Washington. If you just want to like entertain yourself, just go watch Darnell Washington abuse grown men, on the football field. And not to the same degree, but Derek Harmon, every week, there's at least one film clip I put up of him like tossing a 320-pound defensive or offensive lineman. Nick Herbig, his insertion into the lineup, the more reps that he gets, the better the Steelers defense seems to play when he's on the field. Not only is he leading the NFL in pass rush win rate, but his run defense has improved significantly as well. So, yeah, I think they're better at all three levels. And I'll throw in Patrick Queen too, because he's playing some good football.
He is. He absolutely is. And so we're going to talk about the upcoming game here in a second. Before we do that, I want to get your take. I put this question out on my Twitter handle. Anyone that has questions for Coach, let's fire away. We have 3 questions here. The first is our buddy King Tibbs. He said, can Coach touch on the passing schemes that the Steelers run? Seems like every week wide receivers are wide open against our defense. So how can we never have receivers that open against other defense? Which is a very common question here, Coach. Yeah. In your best, making it as simple as possible for the layman, what do you say like with the passing schemes there?
We stink at wide receiver. I think that's the simplest way to say it. Well, there aren't as many receivers running wide open against the Steelers in the last couple of weeks since they made some of the changes we just mentioned. As for our offense, I mean, the formula has been pretty simple. Defenses are shading the safety over Metcalf to essentially double him and just daring any of those other receivers to win. And they can't do it. I mean, I don't care how good you are with the, on the whiteboard. If you don't have guys that can win one-on-one, you're in trouble. I mean, one of the things we struggle with the most at Ocean City High School, where I coach, we're a pretty good physical run team, but we don't have the most athletic kids in the world. And so when we get up against other teams that are pretty good up front and have some athletes, they just go man-to-man on us. They just lock us down man-to-man, put an extra guy in the box and dare us to win. And it's a struggle. And that is the same exact thing that the Steelers are facing.
All right, let's go to Mark Ballas. He says, has James Pierre actually been more effective than Darius Slay? And if so, why? Is it pure physical ability, scheme, or both?
I won't say it's pure physical ability, but I think he knows and understands the scheme better. I think Slay coming over from Philly, where the Eagles were very different than the Steelers defensively. I mean, the Eagles were overwhelmingly a cover 2, cover 4 zone team under Vic Fangio, and now coming over to Pittsburgh, where especially early in the season, they played a ton of different coverages, a ton of different looks. And you also have to understand, it wasn't just Slay coming in. It was Slay, Clark, Ramsey, Thornhill, Brandon Eccles. All those guys were new, and they're all trying to get on the same page together. And Austin was running an overly complicated scheme. I think James Pierre's got much more familiarity with the scheme, and he kind of came in at the right time into the starting lineup at the right time. And as everything is sort of being simplified. So I think that's factored in as well.
All right. Second question from Mark, and it's our last question. Both Mason Rudolph and Mike Tomlin mentioned recently that the game plan includes a menu of plays that are suited to Rudolph in the event that he needs to enter the game. What exactly is the difference between the Rodgers offense and the Rudolph offense?
Yeah. Touched on a little of it earlier, maybe some longer developing pass plays because of Rudolph's willingness to stand there in the pocket, but probably volume more than anything else, simply because Mason Rudolph doesn't get the reps in practice. I mean, in the NFL, in a given week, the starter is going to take 90% of the reps in practice, and the backup's going to get a real small slice of that pie. And so if Mason Rudolph has to come into the game, the menu of plays that they've prepared for him is going to be much, much smaller. Now, if it's an extended absence and he does take on then the starter's reps, then that menu will grow. But I think in the interim, you're going to see the Steelers run a limited menu, and then they're going to try to disguise that by formationing and motioning and all those smoke and mirrors that you can do to try to throw the defense off.
All right, very good stuff. We'll do that every week, Wes, for people if they have some questions. Let's go to our AFC North picks. And so this is where Jeremy and I typically do this. We're going to do this as well. We're going to talk about all the other games in the AFC North. We'll finish up with the Steelers. Let's start off 1:00 Eastern time Sunday. The Bengals host the Patriots. Joe Burrow practices for a second straight day. He looks like he very well could be back on the field. I can't believe it, on Sunday. But no Jamar Chase after his appeal was not reversed. And so the Patriots 9-2 in Cincinnati. The New England Patriots are giving 6 points, Coach. What do you think?
Is this legal and binding, Jeff? Because I'm going to pick all the AFC North teams to lose.
Hey, no, you're not telling people how to play their money. I guess.
All right, good. I mean, wouldn't that be the most Bengals thing in the world, to rush Joe Burrow back into the lineup of a 3-7 team and then get him like seriously hurt? It just feels like that's the direction in which this franchise tends to trend. I don't understand. I mean, they're not mathematically eliminated, but they're 3-7. I mean, you better be 100% sure Joe Burrow is ready to take the field again, because if he's not, and you put him out there against a really good New England team, it just feels like malpractice.
It's funny, if Jamar Chase was playing in this game, I would take the Bengals getting 6 points at home, not to win outright, but to keep it close. Without him, I don't think they stand a chance, even if Joe Burrow plays. And toe injuries, by the way, have ended careers. Jack Lambert's career ended because of a toe injury. So let's keep that in mind. All right, let's go to Baltimore. They host the Jets, the Ravens and Jets, 1:00. Baltimore is giving 13.5 points. Lamar Jackson misses Wednesday practice with an ankle injury. He was back at practice on Thursday. Did the Jets with Tyrod Taylor stand a chance?
No, they do not. They don't stand a chance. And it's not because of Tyrod Taylor. I don't care, if it's him or Fields. They're just overmatched. And Baltimore's playing good football right now. And I think, every once in a while, the Ravens will have this habit, much like the Steelers used to under Ben Roethlisberger, of coughing one up to a team that you should beat. But that's not going to happen at home against the Jets.
I will say take the Jets getting 13.5, though, because the Ravens have played down to their competition. They did it last week in Cleveland. We'll see. Speaking of Cleveland, the game that everyone is so excited about, the 2-8 Browns going to Vegas to play the 2-8 Raiders. Shedeur Sanders is going to get the start. Your buddy Kevin Stefanski. The Raiders are giving 4 points at home. What do you think about this one?
This could be fool's gold for the Browns because the Raiders are terrible.
Yes.
And if Shedeur Sanders goes in there and just doesn't stink, and that this is a winnable game for Cleveland, oh my goodness. Can you imagine? Now you get the Sanders hype train. I think that is the last thing Kevin Stefanski wants to have to deal with, is right. Shedeur Sanders getting a smoke and mirrors win over a bad Raiders team. And now everybody's saying, I told you he should be the guy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the Browns can win that football game. I mean, they have a good defense. They played the Ravens tough last week. As long as Shedeur Sanders doesn't just absolutely, fall apart, then I think they got a shot.
Yeah, we'll just take the Raiders. We'll move on. That's a bad game. All right. The Steelers at Bears. This line has shifted a little bit. It started out Chicago giving 3.5. Then it went to 3. Now it's Chicago 2.5. Total is 45.5 points in this game. The Steelers, everyone talks about how they haven't won since 1995. They have only played there twice since then, so it's not like this is a regular occurrence. But, Coach, before we get to predictions, what do you think about this game? I know you have an article coming out today, Friday, on SteelCurtainNetwork.com about this game. What do you think?
It's an interesting matchup. I mean, the Bears are 7-3. The combined record, however, of the 7 teams they've beaten is 20-51.
Yikes.
So the couple of good teams that they've played have beaten them pretty well. The Ravens beat them by a couple of touchdowns. The Lions smoked them. I mean, Chicago's like a boom or bust team. You know, they're among the league leaders in penalties, and they give up more explosive plays on defense than any team in the league. But on the flip side, they lead the league in creating turnovers, and they're pretty good at creating explosives themselves. So it's like they thrive on big plays. They'll hurt themselves. They'll make stupid penalties. They'll give up home runs, but then they'll take the ball away and they'll hit home runs themselves. To me, this is a game where the Steelers have to out-Steeler the Bears. They got to play one of those Mike Tomlin games where they don't hurt themselves. They control time of possession. You know, they run the ball well. They don't give up the home runs, and they win like 23-17. It feels like one of those games.
Is that your prediction? 23-17?
Yeah, what the hell? Let's go. 23-17 sounds great.
All right. So for me, I'm looking at this, and I didn't realize Chicago's run offense was as good as it is. It's the second best run offense by season average at 146.6. If the Steelers' run defense can stand tall and force the game into Caleb Williams' hands, I think they have a good shot at winning this game. I think Caleb Williams has a bright future in the league. I just don't think he's there yet. Ben Johnson, everything he does wants to be establishing the run. I think the Steelers are capable of stopping the run against, or at least slowing down the run against Chicago. I like the Steelers to win this one 26-21. And maybe it's a fluky game. Maybe there's some takeaways. Who knows? Another defensive score. Maybe. What the hell? So, all right, Coach, this has been a good first episode of the Coach's Corner. Why don't you tell us what's coming up with you and the call sheet and what you got coming up for Steel Curtain Network?
Yeah, our call sheet podcast runs every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Fridays are always our hot route conversation with conversations about sports and life with Pez from Pez's Picks. And Wednesdays are our whiteboard show where we get into the X's and the O's of the great game of football we were talking about this past Wednesday. Quarterback processing. What does that mean when we talk about how a quarterback processes? And then Monday mornings are always our game ball show. And then over on my ex KT Smith at KT Smith FFSN, tons of Steelers material. I do film breakdowns on Mondays and Tuesdays about the Steelers, and articles 3-4 days a week on SCN.
All right, love it, Coach. Thanks for your time, man. We'll talk next week. Enjoy the game.